Hi everybody. Today we're going to be talking about chromosomal disorders. A chromosomal mutation is a mutation that changes the structure of the chromosomes. Right? Now, a change can happen in a number of ways. You can have a deletion where you're missing an entire chromosome or a part of a chromosome, or a duplication, right? Where a part of a chromosome is duplicated or an entire chromosome is repeated. And we find out that missing DNA can be just as harmful as having extra DNA. An inversion means that you have all your DNA in the chromosome, but it's just in the wrong order, right? So here, instead of having genes A, B, C, you have gene A, C, and then B, right? So all the genes are there, they're just kind of there in the wrong order, in the wrong sequence, and we found that that makes a difference. And then finally you have translocation, and this is when a piece of one chromosome breaks off and attaches to an entirely different chromosome. Again, it does affect the person's traits as they develop later on in life. So how do these chromosomal disorders come about? Like, how do we have these mutations or these changes in our chromosomes? Well, many of these disorders are caused by this random mistake that occurs in meiosis, and that mistake is called non-disjunction. So non-disjunction is when homologous chromosomes fail to separate. So if we look at this cell up here at the top, we have two pairs of homologous chromosomes. We have a red pair and a yellow pair. Normally what's supposed to happen is that after the first part of meiosis, you have two daughter cells, and each of these daughter cells should have one red chromosome and one yellow chromosome. So we should have half of each pair. But instead what happens is that these two yellow chromosomes, they fail to separate. So instead of going one into each daughter cell, both of these get attached to each other, and they both end up going to the daughter cell on the left. Right? The daughter cell on the right doesn't get any copies of that yellow chromosome. Now, if this happens in a male, right, and the process of meiosis is creating sperm cells, what's going to happen is that at the end of meiosis, when you create these four sperm cells down here, cells A and B are going to have an extra copy of a chromosome, right? Every sperm cell should have, in this case, two chromosomes, but cells A and B each have three. C and D only have a single chromosome. So they're going to create offspring that have an abnormal number of chromosomes. So let's look at some genetic disorders that are caused by non-disjunction. Right? The first one, and probably the most common, is Down syndrome. Okay. If we look at the karyotype of somebody that has Down syndrome, remember, karyotype is just an organized picture of all the chromosomes, right? We see that they have 3 copies of their 21st chromosome. Okay. So Down syndrome is also known as trisomy 21, having 3 copies of this 21st chromosome. Okay. Some of the symptoms of having Down syndrome is that you're sterile, so you can't reproduce yourself. Remember that Down syndrome is never passed on from from one a Down syndrome patient to another. It's just this random mistake that happens in the parents' gametes, their sperm cells and egg cells, right? But it does cause some learning disabilities. You have some growth features like smaller hands and actually just smaller stature in general. But otherwise they're pretty healthy and can live somewhat normal lives if you have Down syndrome. An example of a disorder where somebody's missing a chromosome would be Turner syndrome. Here, if we look at the karyotype of somebody that has Turner syndrome, we see that they only have one X chromosome and no other X chromosome or Y chromosome. Right? Because this person only has one X chromosome, they're technically a female. It's the Y chromosome that makes a male a male. Right? So this disorder is monosomy X, having a single X chromosome. These people are also sterile, but can live relatively normal lives. And then you have Klinefelter syndrome. Right? Klinefelter syndrome, when you look at their sex chromosomes, they have 2x and 1y, or 1x and 2y's. Because they have a y in either scenario, they're technically males. However, they're sterile, so they can't pass this trait on to the next generation. Again, it's caused by that random mistake, that non-disjunction that occurs during meiosis in the parents. Alright guys, that's it for today's lesson. Thank you.